Last night was the most heart-wrenching and frightful part of my life. So, so much so that I could barely bring myself to explain it. But now I have submitted that uh, what occurred during my visit and that cursed place that I once called home. A visit which brought the return of my childhood fears. No matter what foul thing befall me then, nothing could prepare me for last night. After waking up to a chilling sight of that toy soldier bitten in half, I found that the window to my bedroom was slightly ajar. On closer inspection, it looked entirely as if the window had been pried open from outside. The latches were bent back a position as if subjected to an unrestricted, unbound brute force. From the outside looking in, I could see three indentions where the unwelcome housebreaker had used some kind of tool to leverage the window and naturally away from its latch. What was particular about those markings was that it seemed to cut across the outside of the window frame like an old, uneven razor. Unlike a crowbar or any other impalement which would have merely left a dent where it had been used as a wedge to force the window open. Nothing had been stolen, and I attempted to rationalize the markings on the window as human-made, and not claw-like as they appeared to be. The toy soldier returned to me so violently I could not explain. My heart sank at the very thought of it. I knew it was a message, but it seemed to me like more of a twisted joke, announcing the arrival of my childhood predator, rather than something to be puzzled over or interpreted. I spent the morning checking each room of my house and its contents. Nothing was missing. I could only hope that whatever fiend had been in the back seat of my car the previous night, that it had only wished to frighten me one last time and then be on its way. Perhaps its reach would be weakened so far from my childhood bedroom. It's too easy for any sane person to persuade themselves that a traumatic event is something more evil, but in this instance, I could not. That broken toy was not a mere joke, but a promise. A promise that it would return for what I did not wish to know. My thoughts naturally tumbled inwards and back to those terrifying nights as a child. I was now reintroduced to the apprehension of bedtime, the longing for the day, and the anxiety of night, like an old and relentless enemy. My fear grew throughout the day, festering inside of me, leading to strange and ominous thoughts that the consequences of unwittingly bringing that thing home. Do not misunderstand me. My fear was not simply for my own safety as a child. I believed that nightly visitor had transfixed and consumed by wanting me. But I did not feel that my loved ones were in any danger. This somehow was changed. I did worry. This time I did feel nothing but fear for my loved ones, because you see, I did not live alone. My girlfriend and I moved in together over 2 years ago. I caused enough damage now that I do not wish to speak her name and simply refer to her as Mary. Mary had and I had a happy experience. In fact, we were very much in love. This coming Christmas morning I was going to propose to her, but that beautiful moment had been barely taken away from me by that random abomination. I knew that Mary would be home that evening. She works in events and promotion, and as a result, is often away from home for days at a time, traveling around the country, coordinating various conferences and exhibits. I do not complain about this, and as she and I both know, that in a solitary character, and that all few days of solitude normally do me good, allowing me to dive headlong into my writing, absorbing each and every word undisturbed. Despite this, I always miss her, and with the events of the past week, really reliving those torturous nights, and then all allowed them to return. I had missed her far more than quickly than I had ever previously done so. She arrived at around 6 p.m., and I greeted her with a smile, a warm embrace, and a passionate kiss. I tried to hide my disturbed state of mind from her, but Mary knows me better than anyone I have ever met, and I immediately inquired, "What's wrong?" I tripped and fumbled through my words as I explained to her that I had written a story about my childhood and exploring those dark and twisted memories I had left so distraught. Mary had an incredibly caring nature, and she immediately laid her suitcase and bags on the floor, sat me down on our couch, and with her soft and gentle way, asked me to talk about the whole ordeal. But I couldn't. I couldn't mention this wretch which had now found its way into our home, this invisible and twisted invader which had been led there by my idiotic curiosity. At the time, I felt that she would think I would be mad, but now how I wish I told her the truth. If there was one thing more dangerous and damaging to a relationship than a lie, it's half-truth. Not because it's deceitful, but because it is a corruption of the truth, perverting and abusing to suit to those needs. I told her my half-truth. I told her about my story and the thing in the narrow room and the watcher at the end of my bed. But that was when the truth told and a lie again. I deliberately and deceitfully mentioned that it was of course just my imagination as a child, and neglected to talk of my experiences of returning to the scene where those deprived crimes. Knowing that she would see the damaged window latch and claw marks, I spun my web as I told the grand tale about how waking up to a burglar attempting to break into our house and having to chase them away. I was quite the hero, I lied to her, and she showed me great sympathy and kindness for my decision. I was embarrassed by the truth then, and I am now ashamed of my lie now. If I had been truthful, then perhaps I could have faced this mess together, but instead that thing took advantage of my dishonesty and put a wedge between us. The events of last night desecrated the most important thing in the world to me. Nighttime arrived in all of its bleakness and was unwelcome. I lay in the darkness waiting. Mary was silently next to me, each breath a soothing reminder of companionship, but despite my growing aversion for loneliness, I would have no sleep that night. I knew from experience that when I invited my uninvited guest would show itself, it would do so with stability, increasing its grip on me with each visitation, as if required time to build up its strength, at least feeding on my fears for suffering. My nerves kept me on edge, which fought back the oncoming onslaught of sleep admirably. In the end, though, biology won as the psych clock lumbered towards 4 a.m. Sleep took me in a relaxing blanket of nightly oblivion. Anxiety washed over me. Oh, my worries a distant memory, sinking deeper into the soft mattress below and finally into a long sought for rest. Sleep, no matter how deep, is really incapacitating. For as I hovered over the cusp of a dream, so, something began to bother me, something invasive or yet distant. I slowly opened my eyes and allowed them to drift through the darkness. Mary was finally asleep, calming myself by listening to her breathing in the night. Inhale was followed by exhale again and again. Rhythmically, hypnotically, I began to drift towards sleep once more. But no, there it was. Something else, just distinct but yet un, undeniable. It was distant, out of the way, almost obscure, but smothering me as if coming from behind something. I strained my eyes in an attempt to define it, but it was all too quiet. I remained in bed several more minutes, but with each passing second, that almost inaudible sound grated on me like broken glass on a raw nerve. Sleep was now abandoned, and with much frustration, I decided to reluctantly investigate the source of the noise. I sat up in the bed and listening intently. It was unlike any other sound I've ever heard before. Quiet, low. But as my mind adjusted to the noise, I slowly began to piece its nature together. It was certainly obscured by something, but the closest thing I could relate it to was a repetitive murmur. I heard something similar previously when I was a child, visited my grandmother in a nursing home, a place which I left an impression on me. Seeing and wondering residents confused and of affectionate mind, meeting around the grounds, like lost inmates, murmuring rep- rep- repeatedly to themselves of days gone past, repeating nonsensical phrases and words. This was this is what it reminded me of a continuous stream of indecipherable words uttered by someone in the throes of confusion. I turned my check. I turned to check on Mary, watching her chest rise and fall with each breath, assuring that she was undisturbed. I left the bed. As I stood up, I recognized immediately from the murmuring was louder. While dark, I had left a light on in the hall, as I always do, which crept under the door and allowed me to view the room in a dim but visible way. I looked around to see if anything was out of place, but the room appeared to be what I expected. My mind ambled back into the night as a child in the second room. Noises could be heard from some unseen but yet ever present menace. I took a step forward, and as I did, the noise once again grew in volume. While I was still lost in indecipherable of the words, I could now hear the character of the voice. It was old, scratching by age, with a harsh, guttural undertone to it. The words were being repeated in a frantic pace and seeming anxious, yet muffled by some unknown barrier. I was frightened, but I drew back strength from Mary being in the room, and with a deep breath filled with strength, I took another slow and silent step forward, my bare feet cushioned by the cold floor below. Again the voice grew louder. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it, but I could have sworn that it had become more alligated as I drew closer. The next step I took shook me into the very core. As it murmured, garbled voice grew louder still. Amongst the rambling, gravelled sound of it, I heard a word which shot an icy shudder through my bones, a word to be feared. It spoke my name. Dear God, I knew my name. To me, it was knowing who I was, somehow enduring that thing with an unlimited reach, that I may never be rid of it. But how did it know my name? That could kill me in any moment. S- Something suddenly caught my eye, a movement accompanied by a ruffle of cloth. I knew now where that rhythmic, alligated, alligated voice originated. I knew now why it was muffled and difficult to decipher. I could now see it, only a few feet in front of me, standing behind the closed curtains. The moon was. It was only bright outside because of the moon, and while it was glimmer of the moon could not entirely penetrate the thick cloth, I knew barely and faintly outlined the thing watching between my window and the curtains. I could not I could I cannot now convoy the strangeness which had overcome me. My anxiety and terror had heightened, but an unusual conclusion and a weird sense of purpose took me over. I had seen what it was. I took another step towards the curtains. They swayed slightly as if caught by a breeze, but I could not tell whether the movement had been caused by myself or the hand of that thing that was hiding behind the shroud of cloth. I was now close enough to hear its labored breathing and displacement of fluid at the back of its throat, palpable with each inhalation. This was it. I was going to confront this monstrosity from my past, this tormentor of children, this coward. Raising my right hand slowly, I accidentally touched the fabric of the curtain, causing a subtle ripple which parted them from them momentarily. I gasped, for though that temporary slit, only for a moment, I saw it. My God, how can I describe what was standing there? Even now, I close my eyes and wish I could erase it from my memory. It shivered and shook as it continued to murmur, repeating some indecipherable phrase, sounding like a bizarre mixture of numerous languages. Its weird skin stretched over an unnatural frame of brittle and prominent bones, vertebrae, ribs, and other inner workings, almost protruding from the paper-thin, pale, lengthy pink, and almost bruised looking husk. As it appeared, the stomach was descended in places, and its bony appearance did nothing to diminish the feeling that it was capable of exerting itself with brute, perverted force on any of its victims. Sickness swelling in my stomach, a tainted offensive smell filled the air, and it was murmuring and whispering in the darkness through what sounded like broken, fractured teeth. I could not help but feel pity for this wretch, quivering in the night as if a victim of a long starvation. I quickly came to my senses and realized that this thing was not to be pitied but feared, not to be understood but exposed. It was not shivering because it was cold. It was shaking with excitement, like a drug addict anticipating the next dose. Sitting there contemplating what had just been between the curtains, I once again prepared myself to remove its shrouder, clothed protection, and reveal it to what it was: a cold-hearted vandal, a prowler of the worst kind, a deviant feaster in its own decoction. As I once again raised my hand, I drew the curtain. Something caught my attention, and it was confused. Gravely and certainly, whispers squeezed through that broken mouth, and uttered the three most terrifying words I have ever heard. Look behind you. A cobra slid down my neck. Momentarily I froze, but love is a powerful motivator. Had I been on my own, fear would have taken me, seeking any possibility of resistance from my mind. But with Mary sleeping soundly in the same room as that thing, shielding someone I loved from that wretch was my only thought. I turned around slowly, and as I did so, I could hear it wheezing, gasping, groaning for air. At a quarter turn, I could smell its breath. The stench of death hung in the air, plague-like and foul. Then I heard another voice. It was not that horror in the darkness, but Mary. She let out a scream which startled and distressed me to my very core, a scream which will haunt me for the rest of my days. I turned quickly. I made eyes on it, but it wasn't behind me. It was on the bed. It writhed and rasped, wheezing in delight, its bony spine curved with the anguish of countless years protruding through a ragged, torn piece of cloth which hung loosely over its torso in a vain attempt to appear almost human. But was it human? Had it once been human? Or was it something so vile, so deceitful, so early and sorrowfully that no man or woman could ever attempt to quantify or understand it? I sprung forward towards it, grabbing, hitting, pulling that thing, even one with every ounce of my strength. Its loose skin slipped through my hands. It squeezed and forced Mary's face into her pillow with glee, as its other limbs are arched and contorted, tearing off her nightdress, running its long, soft fingers over her naked body with its sordid caress. Mary's screams were muffled by the pillow as I began to fear that she was being suffocated. I shouted, I yelled, I pleaded with that thing to leave her alone, to take me or do anything it wanted, but that only served to animate the fiend to even greater depths of depravity. It was hurting her, cutting her, my beautiful Mary. Suddenly it stopped attacking her, but it still kept one of its brittle, gangly, and gaunt yet weighted hands on the back of Mary's head, pushing her face further into her pillow. I had my hands around its putrid neck, trying my best I could to strangle the beast, but my efforts were in vain. Its scrawny frame belied its overpowering strength. I watched in sickly disbelief as it began to run its hideous fingers through Mary's hair slowly and almost with affection. I could now hear the twisting and cracking of bone, the popping of cartilage, the snapping of tendons. Thank God it was not coming from Mary. I was now on its back with my arm wrapped around its throat and my chin rubbing against the skin of its shoulder. As its spine dug sharply into my stomach, it twisted its head into an entirely inhuman way. Its neck clicked and groaned until the strain was in his very orthotic movement, as it hindered it by 1,000 years of rigor. It was now looking at me. I have heard it often said of some people, they cannot see the forest for the trees, but now I truly appreciate that sentiment. So close was I in its black icy stare that I could not take in its surrounding features. I increased my grip, I swore, I screamed. I would have torn its throat out if I could have, but it was all in vain. As it continued to run its scrawny fingers through Mary's hair while looking at me, I don't think I would have ever truly recovered from the sound which seeped out through what I assumed to be its approximation of its grin. A wheezing sigh, a grunt, something which sounded very close to a sinister, unworldly laugh. As its face touched mine, its eyes stared deep into me. Not even my reflection was returned. Two looking glasses into a sanctuary for the dark, devoid of light, happiness, and love. It was staring as if it wanted to say something, as if it were trying to communicate a simple idea to me. Malice. With a retching, stuttering, and violent movement, it tore an entire fistful of Mary's hair, leaving behind an open wound. Then it was gone. Mary did not scream. She merely whimpered. I turned the bedside lamp on, but no words of care or sympathy could console her. She wept uncontrollably. The bed was soaking in blood, which she had seeped out from the numerous scratches on her back and a large cut where an entire section of her hair had once been. I hugged her, told her everything would be alright, then she looked at me. Looking at her tear-filled eyes, I knew what she thought immediately. She thought I had attacked her, that I had done those terrible things to her. Of all the experiences I have had, the look of betrayal, disgust, and contempt on Mary's face will remain the most painful. She is gone. After composing herself, she gathered up some things and left. I tried to explain. I tried to tell her everything that had been happening, but she would not listen. Who could believe such a preposterous story? She simply said that she would not call the police, but that if I ever attempted to contact her, she would just do that. To her, I was the aggressor, not that thing. As she left, she turned to look at me one last time and then burst into tears. I know now that I have lost her forever, the woman I love more than anything on this world, thinks I am a violently hideous human being. If only she could understand whatever it did this. That was not human. And if it ever was, I have long since abandoned that nature. It was 5 a.m. when Mary left me. It's 9 a.m. now. I am sitting here in the cold light of day in my kitchen table, writing this as there is some record of what has transpired, so that people know that Mary knows whatever happens, whatever occurs from here on in, that it was a despicable creature from my childhood, from that cursed narrow room all those years ago, which rained in my misery down upon me, upon us. I am now I must now dispense of the sin. I could not easily sit here mourning the loss of my relationship with Mary, or could I allow myself to be overcome with fear, to, to do nothing, but to simply will not do. I can hear the laughter of my neighbor's children outside, at different stages of my life. I remember that same feeling of joy and happiness from something as simple as playing with my friends, or climbing a tree, or kissing the woman you love, or even drifting off to sleep at bedtime to dream of what could be, in the safety of happily family home. Memories, only memories I feel and I fear I will ever experience that happiness again. This thing has broken me, but I am resolute. Whatever that hideous wretch has in store, whatever it desires to do with me, I will not allow that thing to harm another person or a very child's life as it did to mine all those years ago. But just so you know, it's always the last thing you remember. I must leave you all now, as there is much to be done before it gets dark. Before it returns, my plans are made up, and with any luck, they will succeed. I wish I could say we would speak this again. I think it would not unlikely. I hope you understand what must be done, because tonight I'm going to kill it.